Good morning and welcome to the Longmeadow School Committee meeting today, Monday, July 27th. This meeting is being recorded for LCTV, aired live, and being live streamed at longmeadow.org. So if we can begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Longmeadow School Committee maintains educational policies that foster continuous improvement by challenging and supporting all children in a safe and caring learning environment, enabling them to reach their highest potential and to become productive citizens. Through effective communication and positive relationships, the Longmeadow School Committee will make informed decisions in the best interest of the students, the schools, and the Longmeadow community. As a reminder, we do have a member participating remotely. Michelle, you're good with nobody present?
No one is present, and I can hear everyone.
Okay.
Fine.
All right, so we will be doing roll call votes for everything that we do have today. We do have correspondence, Kim?
Yes, we have an email letter dated July 13th from Miss Lee McGrail-Vengo expressing her interest in being on the superintendent search screening committee when it is established.
Okay. Are there any school committee comments before we get into business? All right. We do have finance sub-funding requests. John, did you want to?
Yes.
Or who's chair? I'm sorry. Liz?
It's
chair?
me.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
1
second.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Sorry. Oh, okay, this one, right. I'm sorry. I lost an email right now, so I'm sort of trying. I was thinking about that. Okay. We have a funding request for the FY16 school choice account. It is in reference to some furniture and materials, and also has to do with materials that move from Blueberry to Center.
Okay.
A second.
So do you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to, where is it? Sorry. I move on the recommendation of the Finance Subcommittee that the school committee authorizes the expenditure of $53,108.42 from the School Choice Fund as presented in the funding request document dated July 22nd, 2015.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Here it is.
All right, seeing none, we'll call for a vote as a roll call vote. All those in favor?
Russell Duvray, aye.
John Fitzgerald, aye.
Janet Robinson, aye.
Kim King, aye.
Liz, aye.
Michelle Grodsky, aye.
Okay. We do have a warrant.
Okay. I move the school committee approve the warrant batch number 2970 of the general fund for fiscal year 2016, dated July 31st, 2015, in the amount of $53,199.49.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, roll call vote.
Russell Duvray, aye.
John Fitzgerald, aye.
Janet Robinson, aye.
Kim King, aye.
Liz, aye.
Michelle Grodsky, aye.
Okay. Before we get into the approval of the minutes, there is an item that has been added onto the agenda, and the reason being is at our last meeting we had discussed sending out an RFP for search firms for the superintendent search. Tom Massa had been working on this up until Friday afternoon and just got some information back on late Friday afternoon, which is why it was not posted on the previous agenda. And the question comes up, the RFP does include a timeline a tentative timeline for the search firm so that they know whether they can meet our expectations or not. And at previous meetings, there was discussion about, was the entire school committee going to vet the search firms, or was it going to be done by subcommittee? And so what I've presented to everyone is two options. One is if the entire committee vets the whole process, and the other if we create a subcommittee to do so. Really, the part of the timeline that we're talking about right now is going to be up until the beginning of September. The other tentative timelines would be, that's the tentative part that's just being submitted in the RFP. Tom was basing this on the fact that we wanted to hire by the beginning of January, which is what we had discussed previously. And I will let you know, he and Chad Thompson were working on the RFP together. We do need to approve this tentative timeline so that it can be in the document and send it to Chad today so that the RFPs can go out. One thing that Chad does note is that all of the quantitative criteria will need to be completed prior to the meeting. Those scores would be the same, would all have to be presented, and those evaluating would be need to be ready to provide scores if we want to make an award decision on August the 24th. Completing the evaluation on the 24th will mean that all reference checks for all proposals received will need to be completed by or before the 24th. My experience with reference checks is that they often do not return calls, takes persistence over days, so reference checks should begin on the day proposals are received. We'll have to have a plan for that. So the one thing, it's not just that we get the RFPs, we open them, we review them. We also have to do all of the reference checks before we can vote on awarding the contract to a search firm. So with that, today we will be approving a tentative timeline to go out in the RFP that will be mailed out after Chad gets it. The RFPs are all due back August the 20th, so that gives a 4-week time frame for firms to submit their bids. So then our next regularly scheduled meeting is Monday, August the 24th, after the RFPs are due. RFPs are due on a Friday. We have our meeting on Monday. If as an entire committee we're going to review and vet the RFPs, all of the background or the reference checks would need to be done before the 24th. And so we need to determine how we're going to do this and how many extra meetings we need to add, depending if just several members of our committee are going to do that reviewing of the RFPs, make sure that the firms meet the criteria that are specified and do the reference checks, or whether that's something this entire committee is going to take on by themselves, and then to determine what meetings we're going to set up thereafter. Because after we do vote on accepting a firm, then we're going to need to determine, is the entire committee meeting with that firm, or is our representatives as a subcommittee meeting with them? So I'd like to open that up for discussion amongst the committee.
Is there any recommendation from anyone about the value of a full committee doing this versus having just 3 people, a subcommittee?
I've not.
I'm thinking like awkwardness and clumsiness of having, trying to get everybody together.
I've not heard anything from Tom or Chad. Russ, have you had any experience with that? Having subcommittees versus, in your professional life, have you had any experience with full committees versus subcommittees taking on this process?
Reviewing the RFP.
I think so I don't typically get too involved in this aspect of superintendent searches, but I think the most common from what I've seen is that it's likely a subcommittee must have done the RFP part, and then it went back to the full school committee. And from what I recall, I have seen school committees as a whole interviewing the search firms. But I think everything that happened before the interview probably happened in a subcommittee format, or maybe even just directly with administration doing it, just basically to see if they're qualified.
Okay. Anybody have any other feelings about that?
So you're saying, so the RFP is going to go out?
As soon as Chad gets the timeline today, and then they're due back on August 20th, which is a Thursday, and I apologize, not the Friday.
But what he's suggesting is that as they come in, we call references?
Yes.
So
Yes.
over that,
So that
3 weeks.
hopefully it could be done. Now, that's hoping that firms will respond early as opposed to waiting until the 20th.
How many firms are we talking about that do this sort of stuff?
I know of 3 within Massachusetts, but
One of them is MASC.
one is MASC, one is NESDEC, and one is, can't remember their name. I know
Roy
they're,
and Hazard, there's a large firm, I'm not clear on the name, but there's a national firm that's been getting
right.
some.
So I'm
business in
assuming that
the
all
state.
3 will submit. I don't know if anybody from outside will submit, so we're talking about at least 3 to be doing reference checks on.
Future management.
So this has been posted somewhere that we're about to begin this.
Right.
I'm not, well,
Well, we had said at our last meeting that we would be sending out an RFP. That was determined at our last meeting.
and so the
On
RFP
camera, on the
the
20th.
RFP was sent out then?
No. We-
Formal? Or is
No,
that-
we said
That was it?
We said that we were developing the RFP to be sent out, which Tom has been working on with Chad from the
Okay.
town for procurement.
We need this timeline,
However, we need a
and then it's ready to go.
timeline as part of the RFP.
Okay. Right now, no firm knows that we're,
Correct. Nothing has
That's
been
what I
formally sent out.
fine, thank you.
read the papers that we've got a superintendent
Right.
that's leaving.
Or like, MASC was here presenting at our retreat,
Yeah,
so.
well, okay, sure.
Russ?
So what if we had a subcommittee do all the preliminary stuff and then make a recommendation to us based on the RFPs? And then as a full committee, we would just select. And then I think the timeline and composition of the search committee, I would prefer, at least personally, that we actually do that as a whole committee. But all the preliminary stuff, probably subcommittee would make sense, so that we're not meeting just to review documents. And most of these firms are well-known, so it's not like we're, they're probably all going to be qualified, the ones that apply.
Right.
So a subcommittee to check the references?
A subcommittee to work with Tom on checking references and reviewing the RFP to make sure that they meet the criteria.
Yeah, but as far as the timeline, composition, of search committee, I think I would at least prefer if we all do that together as a full committee, which would be the last step before they actually move forward. So that's the week of September 8th.
So you're talking when we meet with the firm that we hire, that we meet as an entire committee?
Yeah, probably just once.
Or interviews before we hire someone as a committee, or no?
Interviews are optional, Tom had said. Either the subcommittee can interview, or we can do it solely based on them meeting the criteria of the RFP
And the references.
and the reference checks. That's right.
So a subcommittee to review the references, do reference checks, and make a recommendation to the school committee for.
And they would also
And hire.
review, make sure that the criteria are met.
Okay.
So it would be to evaluate the criteria, review reference, and then make a recommendation.
And it sounds like and hire.
Well, no, the
Or-
subcommittee
oh,
would
yeah,
bring the
the-
recommendation to school committee, and then
Okay.
school committee would vote to accept.
On the 31st, August 31st.
Well, we have to determine if we're going to need an extra meeting to do that, or if RFPs are coming in early enough that the subcommittee can do that.
Mhm.
I would say that we schedule a tentative meeting for August the 31st, just so that it's on the books and we're holding that date. depending on how quickly things are moving. And perhaps we can do it at our regular meeting on the 24th, but at least then it's on the books that we do have a date for the vote for choosing the firm.
And then in regard to Kim's question, we could always at that time decide if it's clear that we don't need interviews, we just wouldn't do it. And if we needed them, we could always vote to do interviews. That would delay things a little bit. But.
Right. So the subcommittee would make the determination of whether we would need to interview or whether they feel comfortable making the recommendation just based on the evaluation and the references. And then we would all vote as an entire committee to accept the recommendation or to vote on which firm would be awarded the contract, and then we would meet as an entire committee to discuss with the search firm how to move forward. Okay. Is that something that's acceptable to this committee? Liz, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, can I, question, for the subcommittee, is this just the subcommittee of the school committee, or is this
Yes.
including others?
No, this subcommittee would solely be school committee, working with Tom and Chad.
Okay.
Michelle?
Yeah, I have a technical question. So I'm happy to do some help or, do some work with any of this, especially checking references, but obviously I can't physically be at a subcommittee meeting.
Right.
So, and then the second technical question would be, in case we want to, talk back and forth about, whoever's doing the work on the reference checks, would it be more advantageous in terms of quorum, since you can't really speak more than 2 people if we're doing it as a subcommittee, but we could speak 3 people if need be. I just am wondering if it would be better for us to do the work as a full committee, but then divide up the work, just to 3 people or something like that. Anyway, just 2 thoughts.
Okay.
I don't have a preference either way. Just those 2 things popped into my mind.
You're going to have large packets of information that have to be reviewed, so your reference checks might be tied to the packets of information. So
Okay.
I don't know how difficult that would be for you, Michelle, being remote.
I mean, if Tom sends it electronically, it can be, communication with the subcommittee can be with Tom, a subcommittee member communicating with Tom directly and not copying the rest of the subcommittee so as not to violate open meeting law.
Sure.
But I would think that, because Chad did say things can be provided electronically for the applications and the references and everything. So I don't think that part would be a problem in terms of you being able to serve on the subcommittee and participate. It's whether you feel comfortable with doing everything electronically and not having hard copies.
And, depending on when it's ready, my husband comes back and forth on the weekend, so he could pick up a packet, if it was ready on Friday and get it to me.
Okay.
Or, anytime before he heads out, he can get it to me over the weekend. So
that's not a problem.
If there are other people that are more interested in serving on the subcommittee or in doing reference checks, then I'm okay not doing them. I just wanted to volunteer to help first.
Okay, and you're comfortable with the idea of what we've proposed with the subcommittee and then bringing a recommendation to the entire school committee to vote?
Yes.
Okay. Kim?
I'm comfortable with that.
You're comfortable, John?
Same here.
Russ?
Yes.
Okay. So do I have any volunteers who wish to serve on the subcommittee? I know Michelle's expressed an interest. Anybody else who would like to work with Tom to review the RFPs, do the reference checks, and then come up with a recommendation?
I am interested. I have a vacation planned in the middle of August, so I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
The 5th to the 12th.
Gotcha.
I don't know how effective that will be.
Well, again,
If stuff comes
you're still
in
talking.
here, I can do it.
Right, you're still talking that,
Well-
if we get, best case scenario, if we get all 3 firms to submit,
I can make calls.
right, we have time before the 20th, but that's your personal choice on knowing what you've got planned and what you've got going on coming back from vacation and whatnot. So, anyone else interested?
I mean, we don't even get it back until the 20th.
But Chad did say that we could begin reference checks as they start coming in.
As they come in, okay.
So if, the hope is that firms would send it in sooner than
Early.
later. I have not spoken to Michael. I can certainly reach out to Michael.
Will these be daytime meetings probably, if we're meeting with Mr. Mazza?
More than likely, or it'll be electronic communication with, we've received, probably some kind of work with Tom to go through how you evaluate the criteria and how you, how to do a reference check, and then, kind of get your stuff and go off. I mean, I'm just speaking for Tom. I don't know if that's what his plan is, but.
Yeah.
When is Tom going to be back?
2 weeks. He just left on vacation today.
Right, so he will be back the week of August the 10th.
Will Chad send us stuff before then if something comes in?
Probably
Or do we have to
not.
wait for 10?
Probably till the 10th.
Okay.
Michelle, does that work for you?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm away from the 16th to the 22nd.
Okay, so that might be rough for you.
Yeah. And the week before that, I have something
Right.
going on in my house, so I kind of.
Why don't I reach out to Michael and either then Kim or Liz. Is that okay, John?
Yeah.
That's fine with me.
Okay.
I've got a full schedule. for
Okay.
this.
All right, so Michelle, I'm putting you definitely.
Okay.
Is that okay? And then I'm going to reach out to Michael, and then either Kim or Liz will talk about that. So the plan will be that those three will work with Tom and Chad, and then hopefully bids come in, RFPs come in sooner than the 20th, so that we could have a recommendation at our meeting on the 24th. But Diane, could you also schedule us a meeting on the 31st? If we should need it.
And that would be at 7.
That's the first day of school, right?
Yeah, that would have to be an evening meeting, because the 24th is our first evening meeting, correct? Yes, so the 31st would be a 7 PM meeting.
Could you just change the 24th to the 31st? Or you really, no, that wouldn't work. If you want to get it voted, if you can't.
Because we are going to, and depending on the firm we hire and what we want them to do
You want
and
them to go.
what involvement we want to have, that's why I had kind of put together the rest of the timeline. We have held dates on the district calendar for public forums. Don't know how many we're going to hold. That will be in consultation with the firm we hire, but knowing how quickly calendars book up and schools plan events, we wanted to make sure to pick dates that right now nothing was on the calendar for. And then the rest of the timeline is loose in terms of the search firm advertising, the interview dates, the school committee interviews, site visits, reference checks. So it's just a very tentative timeline that's out there. Diane, I'll provide you a copy so that it can be posted for anybody who's interested.
Yeah, I'd like to see the advertising one start in September.
Well, and that depends on how we do with the, how we coordinate things with the search firm. So again,
Yeah.
it's very tentative. Some communities do host public forums prior to advertising, so they know what kind of candidates they're advertising for. Some do it in conjunction with advertising, so I didn't want to make any assumptions, on that limiting a firm that we were going to hire.
Were you thinking these public forums that we would all go as a committee as well, or they'd just be?
That would be on the recommendation of the search firm.
Okay. So we should just hold the dates at 7?
I would suggest holding the
o'clock then.
dates. I do know in speaking with people that once it's school committee interviews, it depends on how many candidates are brought forward, because we do interview each and every candidate during that time. So hopefully we'll be able to firm things up once we do hire someone and can get a better idea from them. But I just kind of wanted to give people ideas in terms of the time that this is going to involve. So, you know, in one of one of the firms I was looking at online, you know, a letter that they sent out said, you know, for community members or teachers or principals or whoever they had, you know, we're soliciting for, they said it's about a 40 to 60 hour commitment to serve on the subcommittee. So it's not going to be an easy process, but it shouldn't. We're hiring for a very important position and needing to make important decisions. John?
Do we want to put in anything like doctorate of education preferred, or experience, incumbency experience, or do we want to just throw it wide open?
I think that
Throwing it wide open means you get, well, all kinds of people coming in.
right, but I also think that starting to limit it by education and experience narrows the pool. I'm not quite sure what.
Yeah, that's the whole idea, to narrow the pool. Exactly.
But if the pool's not very big to start with, or very deep, I don't know how much we want to narrow it. And it's not saying that they have to, you know, that the committee has to interview everyone, and that would be a discussion that we have with the search committee, you know, when we're meeting with them to determine the timeline, to determine the dates, to determine the composition of the search committee and everything else of what criteria do we want. And that's where it came down, you know.
So we're going to let them recommend, let the search committee recommend, not our search committee,
The firm,
the firms make a recommendation. Do we want
they're the
Is that what
professionals.
we want to do? Is that,
well,
but-
I think with us discussing, you know, having a meeting with them, and all of us having a meeting with them to discuss these things, you know, would be able to determine that better.
Okay, all right. I just raise it now.
No problem.
I'd like to see them come in with a game plan. You know, after we hire the search firm, they come in with a game plan for us with those type of recommendations, then we could say yes or no. But we could always have some of that as preferred, so we don't limit the pool, but we still show that
Absolutely.
we'd like these other things if we can get them.
Absolutely, because we need to remember that, you know, the search firm works for us, so we get to dictate, you know, our
Okay.
parameters and what we want to see and how we want to work with them, so.
But to go along with what Kim was saying, I'd like them to do that one time so we can get it moving. You know,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, you know, so that would most likely be a separate meeting from a school committee meeting to interview, to sit down and hash out all of these kind of details. It would just be depending on their availability along with ours once we make the hire. All right, any other questions about the superintendent search timeline? Then I can send that off to Chad today, so that the RFPs can begin. All right, we do
Do you need a
have,
motion for that, or? No, all right.
no, I think we have consent to move forward with that.
Just so it's noted that at this meeting, we
did
set it
consent,
forward.
yes.
Okay, fine, all right.
We do have minutes. Kim?
I move that the school committee approve and release,
Not released.
not release, the minutes to the executive session of the June 8th school committee meeting as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Oh, roll call vote. Sorry, it's habit.
I'll
Russ?
abstain.
Russ is abstaining. John?
John Fitzgerald, aye.
Janet Robinson, aye.
Kim King, aye.
Liz, aye.
Michelle Grotzky, aye.
Okay.
I move that the school committee approve the minutes to the June 8th school committee meeting as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote. All those in favor? You're
Abstain.
abstaining again? Okay, Russ is abstaining.
John Fitzgerald, aye.
Janet Robinson, aye.
Kim King, aye.
Liz, aye.
Michelle Grotzky, aye.
Okay, that takes care of our general business meeting. We do have an executive session planned. So you want to do the motion?
Move that the school committee adjourn into executive session for the purpose of strategy as it relates to collective bargaining, Unit A and Unit H, not to reconvene into open session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. This does require a roll call vote.
Russell Dupre, aye.
John Fitzgerald, aye.
Janet Robinson, aye.
Kim King, aye.
Liz, aye.
Michelle Grotzky, aye.
All right, thank you very much. Our next scheduled meeting will be August the 10th at 10 a.m. Is that when we want?
I don't remember.
Yes, I think it's 10 a.m. for every day.
August 10th at 10 a.m. We will see you then. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day.